Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wheel to Wheel podcast brought to you by AbsoluteMotorsport.com and the Alloy TV. I'm James Casey, filling in for Josh today, who's not sounding too good, so he's decided to sit this one out. And joining me today is James Baker again. We're going to be discussing the Australian Grand Prix, and of course, it was won by Sebastian Vettel, and we're going to get straight into it by saying what an interesting way of winning it was, and what were your opinions, obviously, on that VSC that gave Vettel the victory?
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit. Well, it was definitely controversial. Let's not get over the point of that. I mean, a lot of what was being said was correct. To be honest, Hamilton was, in essence, robbed of a win. I'm not a Hamilton fan, far from it, but it was pretty evident that Merc was probably the strongest car out there. But the key thing about this whole VSC was that VSC, you shouldn't be able to gain anything. And the amount that Vettel gained does pose questions into, this was the big talking about, did Mercedes get it wrong, or was it the virtual safety car? A lot of the pointers are towards Mercedes, and they got the maths totally out. So it's a bit of a shock that they would do that, but yeah, big mistake for Mercedes, I think. Very big mistake. Well, obviously a big mistake.
Yeah, I tend to be of the opinion that I'd quite like to see the pit lane shut for the VSC. That's what they've done in GP2. I tend to think, it's not in reaction to this, it's in general. I think that it's just a little bit, we've seen it in the past. Spain last year as well, although that wasn't quite as bad because it didn't actually change the position. Hamilton still had to make the overtake, but he was only in contention because of it. I tend to think that it is quite artificial, and especially with it being so hard to overtake. If, like with Vettel, you can gain that position, and then he pretty much had it wrapped up. So I tend to think that I'd quite like to see the VSC result in a pit lane closed in the future. Would you agree with that, or do you like the idea?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. I mean, I don't think there's anything. There's no reason why they shouldn't do that, to be honest, because then I guess if you do go into the pit stops, like so many drivers did, a few drivers did as well. It wasn't just Vettel. You need to remember Alonso. He gained massively from that. I think, to be honest, he was the biggest gainer, apart from Vettel, of course, who gets the ultimate prize. But Alonso, he managed to get so much from that. He was like running ninth or eighth or something like that before then. So to him to bounce to fifth was just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
But that's another talking point about McLaren, and really, is that their pace? I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that I don't think the FIA will do it knee-jerk reaction, but I think that's something that I'd quite like to see considered for the future. A few people have said, well, hang on, if you did it for the VSC, you'd have to do it for the full safety car, but it is a little bit different there, because if you've stayed out longer and you can't pit under the safety car, then your race is completely screwed. But it doesn't,
Yeah.
if you have to stay out a little bit longer for the VSC, unless you've got damage, puncture, something like that, it's not too much of an effect. So that's my personal view, but it won't be changed straight away. They will probably just consider it maybe for next season after what happened. But I touched upon it being such a problem that because Hamilton just wasn't really able to challenge to get through. It wasn't just Hamilton as well. It was Ricciardo behind Raikkonen, Verstappen behind Alonso, Bottas behind Hulkenberg. No one could overtake despite there being a third DRS zone. And there's been a number of debates about this. Obviously, the front wings, which is a massive problem, ongoing debate on that. And also, should Albert Park be the opening round of the season?
Yeah, I mean, there are big talking points. I mean, Australia hasn't always been that first race of the season. You can't ever discard that as well. I mean, yeah, you're right. There was a lot going on, but there wasn't a lot going on, really. It was a bit of a tale of two halves, if you want to call it like that. Everyone was really close, which is what everyone wanted, but no one could get close enough to make an overtake. We're thinking, oh, yeah, great, look how close all the cars are. Oh, hang on, no one's making an overtake. So cars can be really close on relative pace, great, but they can't overtake anybody. I mean, they added a third DRS zone to the Albert Park circuit. Now, I like that idea. In fact, I welcomed it, but it didn't really do much in the race. I didn't think. I didn't. There was overtaking in the race. That's not. I'm not going to turn around and say nothing happened that race. There was overtaking, but you saw Verstappen. He did have a problem at the start, but he was so. He just like the Red Bull looked on. It looked awful to drive in Dirty Air. It actually looked terrible. And the Mercedes was exactly the same. I thought Bottas would breeze through most of that field. He struggled. Hamilton, he just put the power down, and he couldn't catch Vettel, and he ran off the circuit. It was just annoying. It's annoying for fans, and it's becoming a point where you're right. Those front wings need to be drastically changed. As for Australia changing in the position of the calendar, I don't know. I don't think it's an awful first round of the season. I think it's quite a good atmosphere to kick it off with. A lot of the drivers, and you hear that a lot, that is quite good to kick off there. But, why don't we try somewhere? Why don't we give it back to Bahrain or something? Because that was always quite I think the first race, how am I wording this? The last time we had a first race there was definitely very good. I'm pretty sure that was the time Alonso, 2010. Yeah. So, yeah, maybe they should bring it back. But who knows?
I think as well the timings would be a lot better. So a lot of people who's the casual fans, they're not going to wake up like 6 o'clock in the morning to watch the Australian Grand Prix, are they? So I think that the timing would be really good, and yeah, just giving that more chance for overtaking. But I do agree. I think that the main problem is the front wings. If you change the front wings, then you wouldn't have to worry about the track because you'd get overtaking everywhere. It'd still be difficult round Albert Park, but it would be a lot easier in comparison to what it is now. The front wings need to be changed as soon as possible. And that Ross Brawn's talking about, we'll get that fixed for 2021. It should be fixed 2019, I would say. It's getting out of hand, I think.
I mean, 2021... we're sat here now as 2018, but I hope this does all happen in 2021 because they are living up to something with massive expectation. And knowing the way Formula One is run and knowing the way that we've seen it in the past, is it actually going to happen? Yes, there will be regulation changes, but I still think with every regulation change, you get a dominant force in the sport. Yeah. There hasn't been a regulation change where it's really spiced up the field. Yeah. Maybe 2012, the best year for it, really, but it wasn't a proper regulation change.
Yeah, it was just a little change, wasn't it? A tweak.
Yeah. So there you go. I'm not really too sure to think about that, to be honest, but we need to deliver now. We need to see what all this plan's in action because it's frustrating, as I say. It's just so frustrating.
There is that bit of a juxtaposition. We love seeing the cars on the quali lap. Everyone loves seeing Hamilton do that fantastic lap. But then when you get into the race, you want less speed then. So you've got that juxtaposition. Do you want the cars going really, really fast like they are now, or a little bit more overtaking? Personally, I'd prefer the overtaking, but I do like seeing them go quickly on the qualifying as well. But the front wings is definitely something that has just been getting worse over the years, and it's really got to a point now, I think, where people are getting a little bit fed up with that. One more talking point in terms of the race was obviously Liberty Media coming in and all the changes that they've made. Do you think overall that they've made a positive effect to like the broadcast and the actual event itself?
Do you know what? I mean, a lot of people, even when they tried all this stuff in America for the US Grand Prix, everyone's going, "This is very cringe." Like nobody really thought it's a bit. You had Michael Buffer. It's like this is a bit unnecessary, to be honest. But they kind of they have definitely adapted it, and do you know what? I kind of like it. I don't hate it and I don't like it. It's okay. I can accept it. I like the whole new graphics and everything. To be honest, a lot of people were against that, but it just seemed a bit like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was very weird to just hear like the new theme. I think that's actually sounding quite great with the way that it's broadcast, with the whole Like when you watch on TV, they've got all that build up and everything like that. It does actually, it rises in anticipation, which I suppose is what they want to do. But yeah, I kind of like it. I do kind of like the way that it's being published now. It's nice. It's a refreshing change. I do prefer it to what it probably was. Put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, I think I could agree with that. I wasn't bowled over by it, but I thought obviously they're going to bring something new for the first year that they've really been fully in control of the sport. And yeah, I personally I really like the theme. It's growing on me every time I listen on it. I like that. But hopefully it doesn't get overdone. I think they were using it in the background after the race. I didn't really like some of that. But those kind of small things, they're going to phase out based off the what the fans are saying. And we heard before the weekend, talking about listening to the fans, they were talking about the Heineken hot lap where they were going to stop the commentary and just go on board, put music on and watch the cars go for a lap. They were talking about that idea. The fans seemed to hate it, and they didn't actually try it in the end. So that's good that they're listening to fans, I think. Yeah.
Well, if I'm honest, if I give you my opinion on that, I think, it's a bit, I think what really does make a great pole laugh, and this is just speaking because I'm just that kind of person. I'm immersed with the media and how it's all working out. But you've really got a dramatic moment in Formula One is often made by the commentary that goes with it.
Yeah.
Not the music. So, you get your brilliant one-liners from Murray Walker and all these kind of thing. And it's all down because he's made it what it is. He's taken it by the scruff of the neck. And if you've got the fact that it's a Heineken-sponsored lap, it's like, it's a bit, I don't really want to see that, to be honest. It's, wouldn't want it. I agree with a lot of the other fans in that sense.
So it is good that they didn't go through with that. As you say, commentary, the most memorable moments always have a commentary moment. You say about Murray Walker, Senna with Prost, it's happened immediately. Damon Hill winning his world championship, I've got a lump in my throat. You associate those moments with the commentary that goes with it. I don't like the idea of ever taking out commentary, so I'm glad, thank goodness, that they didn't go through with that. And with regards to the actual graphics themselves, they've already been talking about a bit of tweaks to those, improving that, so that should be good. Now, we've talked about a lot of things just to do with the sport generally. Let's talk about some of the performances over the weekend. And we're going to start off with McLaren, who were the talking point, really, going into the season. The unknown, how far are they going to go up the grid? It looks encouraging for them, but personally, I thought they might be a little bit higher up. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, we did say in the last podcast, the previous one, we were saying this is a big year for McLaren. We all knew that. Going into this year, they had to hit the ground running. I don't think it was quite that good. Qualifying was a bit of a letdown. Yeah. I thought they said, we'll get into the top 10. Don't worry about that. We'll be in there. They weren't. 11th and 12th, that's a bit... really? Okay. So the race, again, I don't know what to think about them, but everyone that doubted them with, they said, maybe you shouldn't have left Honda. Well, maybe they should, looking at it now, because, when you look at Toro Rosso, their race wasn't particularly great, was it? But, no, I like the way McLaren are going, but, again, they finished 17, nearly 20 seconds off fourth place. They were holding up a train, and there was 20 seconds in as many laps, really. So they can't say they've got a massive amount of pace in that car. They done well, Alonso. He done exactly what he needed to do. He got driver of the day, and he done a tremendous defensive performance. But there needs to be a bit more in that car, because you can't be... That was lucky. The safety car, the VSC, helped them out massively that race. It was definitely Haas's, but we'll move on to them, I'm sure. But it's looking okay for McLaren. They just need to push on a bit more now. Let's see how far they can go.
Yeah, that's got to be... Alonso said going into the weekend, this should be the worst race for us in terms of speed. It really has to be for them. I think that there's obviously positives, but overall, I think it was more relief was their sense of feeling for that race. Kind of the idea of Alonso saying, we can fight now. That's not an especially positive thing to say. It should be... Yes, we could really go for the championships now rather than we can defend. We're actually able to defend. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully they'll move forward. You mentioned Haas there. That will be the next point. Really fantastic for them. Definitely the fourth quickest car, just ahead of Renault, who are also making good strides. Obviously, they had that problem in the race with the pit guns and everything, and that was just really strange, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I'm. To be honest, I was gutted. Like Haas aren't a favourite team or anything like that. Grosjean and Magnussen. We said again in the previous podcast. We said if they're going to turn up this year, Haas, it'll be the drivers that need to make sure because the car will be there. It's the drivers that may let them down. Those drivers didn't put a foot wrong that race. They were fantastic. I mean, it was just so annoying, wasn't it? Really, that Magnussen fourth and Grosjean managing to, he was fifth at one point. It looked like it was going to be an absolute dream for Haas. There is plenty of positives, but you can see that it was just they were gutted. The pit crew, they were absolutely gutted that they got nothing from that. And I have to feel the same. It's so frustrating for them, but fantastic start nonetheless. I think there is a lot to come. I still feel from that team, plenty in the tank. I think.
Yeah, and obviously Bahrain was a track where in their first season they did really, really well. So I expect their good form to continue. But there is a little bit of controversy about this, and when I say a little bit, that's quite an understatement. Because if you were to look at a 2017 Ferrari, you were to put a halo on it, and you were to paint it in the Haas colours, it might look quite a lot like the current Haas car, let's just say that. And some of the teams aren't particularly happy. Do you kind of get where they're coming from?
Yeah, to be honest, it's quite scary. It's I mean, I don't know whether that's a kind of a bonus for Haas, or whether it's I don't really know, but you know what? They can do that. There's nothing in the regulations that states they can't do it, so why not? I mean, Ferrari technically was one of the best, well, if not the best car last year, so why wouldn't you? I mean, it seems a bit daft not trying to, replicate something that looks so good. You've only got to bolt a ugly-looking piece of mesh onto the top of the car, and, it's still working hopefully exactly the same, apart from the mesh, of course. But yeah, why wouldn't you go for it? I can understand why teams are annoyed, but you can't really argue to them for it because they're allowed to do it. So nothing against regulations that state they can't do it. So yeah, I can understand, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for teams. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and really, that's as good. Personally, I think that's as good as Haas are ever going to get. I can't see them going any higher than that. If they follow this philosophy, they're always going to be one step behind Ferrari. So technically, it's those jobs, the guys behind, they know that they could definitely go ahead of Haas if they can match the top manufacturers. So really, I think that they've really got to look at themselves more than at Haas. I do get their frustration, but at the end of the day, you should be aiming to be up there with the top manufacturers, and then you'll definitely be beating the customer teams. It just makes me think, why haven't more teams tried this in the past? Because I wasn't sure. I always thought that you'd like this kind of similarity you'd be kicked out for, but it's obviously just not the case. Just teams just haven't done it in the past.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. Yeah,
but obviously that should be a good season for them, and they should be fighting with Renault and McLaren. A little bit further down, Force India. Really disappointed for them. No points in Australia. That's like the first time in like 5 years or something, I think.
Maybe longer than that, to be honest. It was... I'm not going to say horrific, because, to be honest, when Force India have scored in the past, they may not have had the greatest car. 2015 was a prime example. That car was awful. Yeah. Like, they only really... I mean, Jenson Button was Perez and Button. They also got 10th and 11th. Bear in mind, only 11 cars finished, I think, that race. So, but really, it was shocking. Like, qualifying didn't look good. The car didn't really look like it was overly there. We know Force India are famed for upgrading their car. Never straight away. It is kind of built upon during the course of a season, but really, I mean, they needed to go to Australia, and they've got a car that can really compete because Haas looked good, McLaren looked good, Renault looked good. And if you're not pulling your weight, you are going to lose big time because those teams, they will knock you off your perch this season because they do look good. And Force India really do need to, maybe step up the game in Bahrain. Maybe we will see something a little bit different, but qualifying looked poor. And ultimately, the race wasn't too great either. So there's a lot to come yet for Force India.
Yeah, I think in many ways they're a victim of their own success in the previous seasons. Because really, if you look at it on paper, taking out all history, you'd think, well, seventh, yeah, that's all right for that kind of team. But yeah, just that step down from last season is very disappointing for them. But we've covered the midfield. We'll go back up to the top now. Obviously, behind that, it looks like Sauber, Williams, and Toro Rosso are all struggling. But we'll talk about that in a future episode because we've talked for quite a long time. So let's just go back to the front now. Those top three teams. And Hamilton obviously did a fantastic job in qualifying, dominant performance. Bottas had problems, so we didn't really get to see the best of him. But it does look like Mercedes have an advantage over Ferrari and Red Bull at the moment.
Definitely agree with that one. Yeah, Hamilton looked on rails in that qualifying lap. And the gap was just ridiculous. It was something, was it 0.6 7/10 of a second faster than a Ferrari? It's a bit... Wow, because there was moments in that Q3 session where I was looking on social media. I was like, "There's so many people going, oh, it's going to be a great season. Look how close it is." There's that moment of 2 minutes where nothing happens, and then Hamilton just straight in there, 0.6 faster. There was a point in that session where the top three were filled by less than a tenth, and then he done that. It was just, oh my god. People were saying, "Is that the car or is that the driver?" Can a driver really extract that much from the car was what was being said about that. We've seen it plenty of times in the past. Schumacher, Senna, real greats of the sport, can drag a lap out of nowhere. And I do feel that Mercedes is good, but I feel a lot of it may be down to Hamilton. We know how good he is at qualifying, so let's not go away from it. It was quality lap, absolutely sensational.
So it will be interesting to see whether that trend continues, and ultimately that will tell us the story. But at the moment, Mercedes are going to be happy. He took second place, which isn't the result he wanted, but hopefully for him, he'll be fighting back next time out. Ferrari and Red Bull then. Ferrari did better all weekend, but are they necessarily quicker? I'm not too sure.
I'm not too sure either, to be honest. There was a lot of surrounding Ferrari, to be fair, because the whole weekend it looked like Raikkonen actually had the edge on Vettel, which was very against the turn. Everyone really thought, okay, this is a bit, whether it was Raikkonen outperforming himself or whether, it shouldn't be worded like that, to be fair, because we know how good a driver he is, but recent form in recent years would suggest maybe, he needs a turn in form now. We said again in the previous podcast, it's a massive season. It just goes to show, though, that whatever happens, Vettel always seems to be in the right place at the right time. He definitely wasn't the quickest driver this weekend, or that weekend. But, yeah, that Ferrari, there's still a lot to come. Because that is not... I think the key thing here is the use of the word sandbagging in qualifying and the race was so prominent when people were talking about Ferrari. They're like, oh, they're sandbagging, nothing's coming yet. And it's like, are they, though? Because maybe Merc are just that good. Yeah. Maybe they are that quick. And it was just a bit of a worry. But, yeah, it shouldn't. Ferrari definitely aren't as quick as Mercedes yet. Definitely.
Yeah. Red Bull had a bit of a troublesome weekend, but I think it's hard to read into that. Obviously, Ricciardo got the fastest lap and was pressuring Raikkonen, so we will see with that. I think it's really close between Ferrari and Red Bull, and then Mercedes a little bit further up. But one more thing, which I was going to talk near the beginning of the episode, but I forgot about it. This will just be the last thing we mention: the engines, and this is my main concern from this race. Race number 1 of the season, and we're talking about Hamilton, or is he pushing his engine too hard? Quite frankly, I just think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, shocking. Shocking. I mean, Lewis Hamilton is a man who can drive a car possessed. He looks possessed when he's driving a racing car, which should be the same for any other driver in Formula One. But they shouldn't be saving engines. That is absolutely ludicrous. When you watch other sports, for example, you watch a game of football, for example, they just, oh yeah, we're winning it by a goal or something. We'll just sit back. We can't really push for much more because this is all we can hope for. Yeah. That's kind of what it's like. They kind of park the bus on the engine, so there's nothing more to give. You just can't push it because the moment you do, you're thinking, oh well, they shouldn't have to think in Australia. They shouldn't have to think, well, maybe our engine's going to run out by the French Grand Prix. It's like they don't need to. They shouldn't think like that. That's not Formula One. That just doesn't work. It doesn't make a lot of sense how they'll get a ridiculous grid penalty if they do change their engine, and they have to save their engine. So it's literally never going to be a win-win situation. No. Ever. It's shocking. Yeah. Absolutely appalling.
Yeah, personally, I think that the person who decided on that rule should be shot.
Immediately.
That would be the nicest thing to do to them, I would say. But yeah, that was the most disappointing thing for me, because that really doesn't help with the overtaking as well. If it's hard to overtake anyway, and you can only use your engine for 2 laps, because be careful, if you lose it for 3 laps, then yeah, in 7 races down the line, we're going to have a problem. So we've got to be careful now. It's just,
I'll just add though,
it takes away from the moment.
I remember a couple of years ago, we had this whole thing about the manual starts and everything. They were all going, oh yes, the fans want to see drivers on the limits, really testing their patiences and all this kind of thing. And that it's got to be the driver, not the car, not the team as well. It's just the driver in his car. That's how it used to be. But is it? Because back then, of course, you had none of these technical shenanigans that you've got now. And now you're making it so impossible for a driver to drive his car that it isn't entertainment. It's just pure frustration. That isn't what we're here to see. We're here to see a race to the best of the driver's ability and not what the engine can cope with. Seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely frustrated me. And unfortunately, unless they figure it out when we get to round 9 and we've got everyone starting from the back, unless they figure it out by then, we're unfortunately going to be moaning about that all season. But anyway, that wraps up everything. We've talked quite a lot about this particular race, with it being the first race of the season. Plenty of talking points. So if you've watched and you've enjoyed, make sure to comment down below about all the different debates that we've been having about all the teams, how they're doing, that kind of running order, obviously the engines, the broadcast stuff, the front wings, plenty of stuff to discuss. If you want to, just pop that down in the comments and we'll happily have a discussion with that. That's what we want, all the fans getting involved. But we will be back this time next week for the preview of the Bahrain GP, and we will see you then. Thank you very much for listening.